In the co-main event, another title fight. Some could argue this should be for the undisputed belt, but we've got Tom Aspinall defending his interim heavyweight strap, now a minus 400 favorite. Those odds have moved quite a bit, versus Curtis Blaydes, who is a plus 300 underdog. John, it's murky, but can you contextualize this situation with the heavyweight belts right now? I mean, Aspinall is lined up for an interim title defense. I'm not sure if that's happened before. Maybe you know the answer to that. And how should fans maybe approach Aspinall's defense?
I think Renan Barão might have had a bantamweight title defense as an interim champion back in the day. As far as I'm concerned, this is the defense of an undisputed heavyweight championship for Tom Aspinall. Yes, he's disputed right at this point in time because there is actually an undisputed champion who happens to be the greatest of all time in Jon Jones, but Jon Jones would have to be disputed as well because he hasn't competed in so long and because there was the necessity to have an interim champion in his absence. Stipe Miocic last competed in mixed martial arts when he was 38, and it stands to reason that when he returns in November against Jon Jones, that will be the fight, but he'll be 42. So that is less than ideal. There has obviously been a long gap since Jon Jones became the champion at UFC 285 against Ciryl Gane, but as you and I have discussed prior, promotionally, you're not in the business of stripping the greatest of all time, and Jon is not going to vacate the championship. So it has made these waters very murky or muddy, as Redman might say. It necessitated an interim championship that was won in most dominant fashion by Tom Aspinall, a guy who a lot of people believe skill for skill could go down as the greatest heavyweight of all time when all is said and done. So as far as I'm concerned, yes, he's defending his interim belt. No, the belt in color is not silver. And even though I've advocated for that in the past, I feel like interim champions are world champions, right? They have become the champion when the heavyweight champion can't defend, or the undisputed champion can't defend for whatever reason. So as far as I'm concerned, if Tom Aspinall successfully defends against a live Curtis Blaydes, it's an undisputed title defense. As for how the heavyweight division moves forward and light heavyweight champion Alex Paredes, factoring in all of that, I have no answers for you. But I think for commentators and fans alike, we're hoping that when we turn the calendar to 2025, we have clarity, if not finality, when it comes to some of these matchups and fighters.
Yeah, Aspinall, he's got the heart of a champion. I mean, he's got the people on his side. He's all about action. All 8 of his UFC fights have gone under 1.5 rounds. He's seen the second round just once against Andrei Arlovski. Took care of him pretty quickly in that second round. Curtis Blaydes owns 5 decision wins, John, in the UFC. Is it in Blaydes' best interests to try to drag this fight into the later rounds? Or maybe he can lean on some of that cardio and some of that 5-round experience?
Good question. I think both guys have great cardio. Both guys are really good on the ground, albeit in different capacities. I don't think it behooves Curtis Blaydes to wrestle here. It gets trotted out in mixed martial arts and boxing, lunch boxes for fists, right? And I understand Tommy Aspinall is dipping his knuckles in petrol, as he shared with Ariel Helwani earlier this week, right? But you should see Curtis Blaydes walk into a fighter meeting and put his fucking hands down on the table, right? Lunch boxes for fists. He's going to try to throw. I don't think he's going to try to take Tom Aspinall down and play the wrestling game or play the jiu-jitsu game. I mean, certainly he might try to find an opportunistic takedown and do some damage in those situations, but I don't think he's going to try to elongate or lengthen this fight, spend too much time on the ground. I think Curtis Blaydes and Tom Aspinall are both going to be looking for the knockout within the realm of technique, and just can't wait to call it. The doors are going to blow off this place. I think there's actually like an alcohol curfew at some point in time. So hopefully we can push that back into the wee hours. Like, I want to get hit in the back of the head with something. So hopefully the fans in the UK are hearing that. And if my haters are in the building, let's be chucking things at the back of my head at 4 a.m. I want it to get raucous in there.
Yeah, well, alcohol ban or no, I'm sure the UK fans will find a way to resort to some other substances of choice that may keep them fueled throughout the night. Curtis Razor Blaydes, been around a minute, not especially flashy, but is it time we put a little bit more respect on his name?
Yeah, certainly on that list of the best fighters in the sport right now, like Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, and others, who have never realized an undisputed championship. And this man has never even fought for it. He's been on the cusp of it. So I'm happy to see him get this opportunity here. And even when you look at singular wins in terms of the overall underappreciation of Curtis Blaydes, he still got in an octagon in enemy territory against Tom Aspinall and got a green stripe on his Wikipedia page and looked really good with his boxing early. I know it was a 15-second fight and it ended unceremoniously, but Blaydes didn't get a modicum of credit for that win. You know, he had a big win during the pandemic against Alexander Volkov, and look what Volkov has done over the last several years. Blaydes is an absolute stud. You know, when he's married to the game, which he is most of the time, and training at altitude, he's a real problem. And you know, I don't bet these fights, right? I am a little bit surprised to see the width of this betting line just because it is the heavyweight division. I think it speaks to the underrated nature of Curtis Blaydes, not only in this fight, but as a whole. But, you know, he's been in a lot of big spots before and has won in those fights. Look at the Jailton Almeida win. So I'm excited to see what he can do with the showcase. I'm also excited to see what Bilal Muhammad can do with the showcase. And at least for me, after having a few weeks off, you know, UFC 304 can't come soon enough.
Yeah, Blaydes certainly a live dog at plus 300. I know you touched on the future of the heavyweight division, but I want to give you 3 scenarios, Jon, and I'm hoping you can pick the one you're most interested in and then the one you think is most likely to happen. Now, these can be the same choice. Let's assume Tom Aspinall wins. We've got Tom Aspinall versus Jon Jones. We've got Tom Aspinall versus Alex Pereira. And then we've got 3 Tom Aspinall versus the winner of Cyril Gane versus Alex Volkov, which is rumored for UFC 308. So I need, of those 3, one you think is the most likely to happen and the one you are most interested in seeing.
Oh, gosh, man. Great question. So, I just don't think we're going to see Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall, but that would be the fight that I would be most interested in seeing. Joe Rogan wields a lot of power. So as he continues to lay a foundation and push for a fight between Jon Jones and Alex Pereira, you know, I think that maybe that might even in some way, shape, or form have more traction than a fight between Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall, as crazy as that sounds. But, bro, I wouldn't be surprised to see Tom Aspinall, Alexander Volkov if he beats Curtis Blaydes, you know? So I don't know what's going to happen with Jon Jones and Stipe, but if we are assuming that Tom Aspinall holds serve as a minus 400 favorite, you know, I think it's one of those, you know, with respect to Volkov and the others, it's one of those guys, those non-big name heavyweights. And, you know, Jon Jones or Stipe riding off into the sunset as the retiring, vacating, undisputed champion of the world. And Alex Pereira probably fighting Magomed Ankalaev in his next fight.
Also really excited for our main card opener. A bit of a lightweight banger between Paddy the Baddy Pimblett and formerly Bobby Green, now King Green. His Highness is a minus 125 favorite over Pimblett, who is an even money underdog. Jon, let's pretend we're the sportsbook here. Why do you think Bobby Green is favored? Is it as simple as the public souring on Pimblett over his last few performances, or is this, you know, deserved respect for Green as the chalk in this fight?
So it's probably because he changed his name legally to King. I think that's a big part of it. I mean, are we swearing here? I think we're swearing here, right? Why is Bobby Green the favorite? Do you really want to know? Like, as a fight fan? Because he's fast as hell, man. I mean, he's still so fast as far as I'm concerned. I know Paddy Pimblett has recently questioned Bobby, this is going to fuck me up all of fight week, right? Bobby Green. It's King Green. I got to drop the Bobby something fast. But he's just so fast. And I know Paddy thinks that he can touch a chin that maybe has been compromised in fights prior. But I was 5 feet from Bobby Green against Jim Miller at UFC 300. I did it again. And he just looks so fast and explosive defensively, offensively. The vision is still there. I don't know. Maybe my eyes deceive me, but this still looks like a prime King Green to me. And I think that's why he's the betting favorite. And I would also submit to you that I think Paddy Pimblett's a little bit underrated because of the Jared Gordon fight in which he experienced some adversity and maybe shouldn't have won that fight on the judges' scorecards. And maybe his UFC career hasn't had the style points that a lot of people thought it would. And maybe relative to expectations, he hasn't lived up to the hype, so to speak. But, you know, I think he's going to want to grapple here a little bit. I think he's going to want to mix it up. And we'll see. We'll see who has the better cardio if the fight ends up going to a third round. But I do believe King Green, based upon what I saw most recently, deserves to be the favorite in whatever range. He's still got all the speed, I think, that he had, you know, in his late 20s.
Yeah, hell of a performance at UFC 300 against Jim Miller. Now, Pimblett is an esteemed grappler. We know this. He should presumably have the grappling advantage on July 27th. But, I mean, let's not sleep on King Green's grappling ability, right? He was an esteemed high school wrestler. He's never lost by submission in the UFC. What my gut tells me, Jon, is that this fight will be decided on the feet. And in that scenario, I mean, has Paddy made enough progress in the stand-up game to outstrike a guy like Bobby Green?
Well, only time will tell. He certainly has been working, and I do think that some people lean too much into just how big Paddy Pimblett maybe gets at times when he is not in training camp. I've said repeatedly, if Paddy Pimblett's going to be the world champion in the UFC, at least, I think he's going to have to stack training camps where he's a little bit more focused on discipline, than recreation. But some people are able to find that balance. But yeah, I mean, I think he's maximized the developmental time when it comes to working on his striking. And he is a gifted athlete. He definitely has a style and a stance and sort of hopping on his feet in and out. I like watching Paddy Pimblett strike. He definitely has power. He's definitely capable, definitely has a pre-UFC highlight reel on the feet. But I don't know. I don't know how the physical strength is going to match up in clinch situations. Presumably, we will see some of those. And, elbows are sort of a lost art. You heard me talk about loose elbows earlier. Kenny Florian talks about it all the time on our podcast. One elbow can completely change the complexion of a fight. Just ask Macy Chasson, right? Most recently. So, throw an elbow up against the fence in the clinch or on the ground, it changes the complexion of the fight. If any fighter I think is going to make it dirty, it stands to reason that it could be Paddy. So I don't know. You don't want to, play around too much on a napkin with Bobby Green. He can really be a sniper.
Yeah, Pimblett, has been putting in some work, but as you mentioned, recreation, he is a dude that likes to have fun. Obviously, he's going to soak up the energy of the home crowd. We saw him before, fans with the wigs at the O2 Arena. Jon, you know this game well. You've been cage side for a lot of fights. If we could boil down to how does the home crowd boost actually impact fighters? What tangible advantage have you seen it bestow fighters in the cage?
Well, Ethan, I think it can go both ways, but for the most part, it is certainly a performance enhancer. I mean, even I could go back to Abu Dhabi, right? Right? You say he only had one TKO. It was of Sean Brady with all of Abu Dhabi behind him. So I certainly think that it is something that I would factor into my handicap. I think far more often than not, it is something that a fighter is buoyed by as opposed to something that they crumble underneath. My beloved podcast partner, Kenny Florian, one of the biggest fights of his career against Gray Maynard at TD Garden in Boston. And I don't think he crumbled under the hometown pressure, but certainly there were a lot of distractions for Kenny, and walking out at the Boston Garden for a title eliminator, I think put a lot of pressure and maybe some undue pressure on him. But when Tom Aspinall hits that tunnel, Ethan, 2 weeks from now, July 27th in the middle of the morning, I think that's going to be the loudest that building gets with respect to Leon Edwards and Paddy Pimblett. And maybe I could be wrong. Maybe the hour is going to dictate things, and Arnold Allen, competing earlier is actually going to get the biggest ovation. But there's nothing like that when Tom Aspinall hits that tunnel, what that vibe and volume is going to be like. And I think it's going to motivate him to go out there and try to take care of business in 2 minutes or fewer.